marketing is always going to be an art and a science, because you do need to incorporate storytelling and visual communication skills and the creative aspect of marketing. It's all about really trying to engage in a conversation with your audience, which you do with words, you do it with video, you do it with imagery. There's various different ways that we communicate. So that's the kind of the creative side of it. And then the science side of it needs to be really data driven, because when we're marketing online, which most marketing is these days, we need to really be trying to interpret what those results are and get our heads around the I don't want to get too techie, but get our heads around all of the metrics that give us the information around the results and how we might then influence them to get better and better.
Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey toward freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Uncovered. I'm really excited. I've got an amazing human here that is going to help us learn about marketing, one of these things that a lot of businesses hate doing. And you're one of the experts in marketing. I'd love you to give us a big hand on how to do this really well. Catherine, welcome to Uncovered.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
So let's get a bit of a backstory about you, Catherine. You've run a couple of businesses. Tell us about what got you into business, what happened in your first one. You're doing another one now. Let us know what you're about and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So I kind of fell into business probably because I'm a little bit of a stubborn person, actually. But my career was in advertising and marketing, branding and all of that kind of stuff. And I was living in Sydney at the time. And then I had two little babies very close together. And it was the sort of situation where, and especially living in Sydney, I'm sure you can imagine, hours are really long, commutes are pretty bad. And I just was, I didn't have these two babies to stick them in 10 hours a day of daycare and not see them when they're awake. So I didn't want to go back, but, I'm also the kind of person that's like, okay, I need to have something to do with my brain. So, and I decided, a business will be good, Of course, very naive at that time of what the effort would be. And it's not a small task to start a business. But anyway, I started that business. It was an eco-friendly baby brand, and it did actually take off, and it went pretty gangbusters. And over, I think I had it for about 7 years. And I just, and I had a third child as well in the middle of that. So, I had these three little children, I had a business, I had a pretty dysfunctional relationship with my business partner, I have to say. And after about 7 years, I kind of hit a wall where I hadn't been dealing with the stress levels overly well, and just trying to get through every day. Sleep was broken because of the kids, and, just kind of reactive all the time to everything that was happening in my day. Did manage to build the business up into something significant, but yeah, it was just got to that point where I hit a wall and I'm like, I need to get out of this somehow. So I sold out to my business partner, and then just needed to take a little bit of time to recover from that one.
Yeah. So Catherine, this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand in business. This is a standard story that I hear a lot around business burnout. And it's so common It's so common in business all the time. Like people get to a point where they're strung out. Were you in that place, Catherine, where you were providing that service happy on the front end and not sharing what you were really going through on the back end? What was happening for you?
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't feel like I could talk about it with my team, because my team incorporated a lot of my business partner's family. So that was a little bit isolating, but it was in an e-commerce space. So the weird thing about that, I mean, I love everything to do with digital marketing and advertising and e-commerce generally as an online business model. I really love it. But the weird thing about running that sort of business model is that you just actually don't physically talk to humans.
Yeah, wow.
So I literally wouldn't talk to anybody aside from my kids. And then it's like, mummy, I'm hungry, or whatever, when they were little. So yeah, you're not having any adult conversations. So no, I didn't really share about it with anybody, maybe just my sister.
Yeah, and that's really tough, isn't it? Listeners, please, if you're doing this or you've done this like Catherine has, please reach out and get support. It's one of the hardest things that we do in business is feeling isolated. And this is really, really common for leaders to be isolated in the game of sharing. So you're doing your stuff and maybe not talking to everybody that you could, and then, meltdown. It's a common meltdown.
I think you can see I've got a gold crown on my tooth. I had this towards the end of the business. I cracked a tooth. I ended up needing glasses, and there were a few other things like that. I was like, okay, I've hit a wall here. I need to do something to get well again. So yeah, that was kind of, and it was a shame really, because, the rest of the business and what it was all about, I absolutely loved, but obviously it was a very dysfunctional way of operating at the time. So so I got out of that one. And then after a little bit of a break, I guess, the one place where I would talk to people in that business was when I would do all of the trade shows and expos and would travel around the country doing a lot of those sorts of things. And so I'd, networked with other business owners and met lots of people that way. And after I sold out of that first business, a few of them noticed that I wasn't at these shows anymore and got in contact with me to say, hey, Kath, what are you doing? And when I said, I sold out of the business, they're like, oh, great, can you work for us then? So that kind of led into creating my agency.
Yeah. So tell us about your agency. What do you do now that you have a Productpreneur Success group? What does that mean?
So I guess my love really is working with people. So people who invent products are typically really creative. They're very, by definition, they're innovative, they're innovators, and they're usually trying to solve a problem in the world. So, you'll meet a lot of people in that space who are building businesses and brands with purpose. They're very intent on making the world a better place generally, right? So that's the kind of business, I guess, that I had, and the kind of businesses that I really love to work with. But what we do to help them is in two ways. So we have an academy where we train earlier stage businesses that are looking for help. How do they launch? How do they start to grow? How do they get their marketing systems in place so that they aren't just, scrambling and not knowing where the next customer is going to come from, all that kind of stuff. And then we also have our digital marketing agency. So it's kind of like a next step on when they're ready to really fly and really scale and they need to outsource or get some help on their team. So yeah, so that's kind of what we do.
Wow. And so tell us about your marketing puzzle piece. Like when someone comes and they're starting up and they really have no idea what they're doing, you guys come in and show them like from the ground up what it looks like. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So we take a fairly systemized approach. I guess I'll always say marketing is always going to be an art and a science, because you do need to incorporate storytelling and visual communication skills and the creative aspect of marketing. It's all about really trying to engage in a conversation with your audience. which you do with words, you do it with video, you do it with imagery. There's various different ways that we communicate. So that's the kind of the creative side of it. And then the science side of it needs to be really data driven, because when we're marketing online, which most marketing is these days, we need to really be trying to interpret what those results are and get our heads around the I don't want to get too techie, but get our heads around all of the metrics that give us the information around the results and how we might then influence them to get better and better. So it's being able to marry those two together. Yeah.
Wow. Because look, listeners, I am probably the worst marketer in the whole world. One thing I've done though is people just found me. I always got found. So when I started running my healing business, I just got booked out just by referrals.
Yeah, I was going to say word of mouth marketing probably has carried you, because it is the most effective form of marketing. And unfortunately, the only way you can influence it is if you do a good job. Well, fortunately, I suppose, but there's no other way. You can't spend your way into that. You have to just do a really good job.
Yeah, that's right. No, obviously I was lucky. I fell on my feet because I was must have been doing a good job, and I had lots of people just coming from around all over the place to find me. When we're in that place in the beginning, I remember what it was like. I put flyers on car windows. I think it was illegal to do so, but I didn't know.
I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Facebook didn't exist back then.
No.
So there was none of this techie stuff that we know now. So how do you get started in this day and age? What does it look like from your perspective, Catherine? Because I'm old school. I started with
I started with fax marketing. So there you go.
What was it?
Fax.
Oh, that's awesome.
Remember the old fax machines?
Yeah, they're awesome. That's so cool.
My goodness. My kids would have no idea what those are. I think the thing that you need to start with is thinking about all the different ways that you can find and build an audience. Because if you think about it, if you have no audience to sell to, then you will not make any money. You'll be the world's best kept secret and you will never get traction. I think one of the mistakes that I see a lot of early businesses make, in digital marketing at least, is they think that they can just get started with paid ads and they'll be making $1 million overnight pretty much. And you just can't, because people don't know you, they don't know to trust you. If you're sending paid traffic to a website that doesn't have any performance history, it hasn't converted at all, then you're going to be spending a lot of money to get your way out of that. So building an audience, you can do it in a variety of ways. I guess, popular with brands is working with, influencers and collaborating with other people on Instagram and things like that. TikTok's obviously taken off a little bit with that sort of thing too. But there's so many other ways as well. Good old PR, that is still really effective. I guess in my space, getting out to exhibit at trade shows and expos or markets or anything along those lines. For service businesses, working, collaborating, I think works fantastically, which I know you've done. That's how I've met you, obviously. But also, so for instance, I'm going to be a judge and a mentor at a women's business awards program that's happening very soon at the end of this month. And I've been involved with this group off and on for a really long time. And, I get introduced to lots of fantastic people there. So that's another way of building audiences.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of that, you wrote down that you've got this, you want to help female inventors and entrepreneurs. One of the things that I've had a chat to a lot of women who just do interviews, and a guy goes into an interview, they look at the selection criteria. If they can do 3 out of 10, they go for the interview. And a woman, they go 7 out of 10. I'm not really sure whether I should. They've got so much ability. Women really need to stand out, in my opinion. And I think, how do you get? Do you see a difference between the males and females who jump in the different state of play that males and females are in entrepreneurship?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure that, as will be no surprise to anyone watching or listening, but a lot of women in business are making decisions intuitively and not based on logic or data or information in front of them. And so when they're coming into a situation where they have no experience, which, let's face it, if you're an entrepreneur, you mostly are doing things you have no experience in, right? It's all new.
Yep.
And there's a lot of fear, I think, for a lot of, and I'm sure it's not just women, but there is a lot of fear about that unknown and whether they're going to make a mistake and they're going to have egg on their face. And so it is different whenever we work with blokes, particularly. So we had a conversation with it was a glasses brand owner a couple of weeks ago, and it's just all about the data. There's no emotion really involved in any of the decisions. He's very happy to just make decisions based on what those metrics are in front of him and not worry about whether some customer had a poor experience or whatever. They don't take it personally.
Yeah, so that's a different setting, isn't it? I'm probably more of a female entrepreneur then, in my opinion.
You probably are a little bit more in touch with your emotions than most blokes, I would say.
Oh, very much so. And it can be a bit of a challenge, I think, when we have this logic and reason, and then we have this emotional, instinctual part of us. It can be a bit of a hesitation, can't it?
Mm.
And this is one call out, listeners, that I have. I really have this passion and plea out to all the people, especially who Catherine is wanting to reach out to and help the intuitive type people who have that emotional want to share. Because look, you guys have this really important aspect, and I see this in your eyes, Catherine. For people who get to watch Catherine, she's got this beautiful care in her eyes, and that is essential to business. And I think women own this because of kids. And you don't just make decisions on your business. You're like, what does kid 1, 2, and 3 need from me today?
That's
and
right.
How do I need to make sure I do dinner? Oh, and I've got to make that business call.
That's
right
it.
This
You
moment.
could be nurturers as well.
Yeah, so natural nurturers. So I'd love to sort of talk to that, because I know sometimes, because women do have that natural nurturing, is this a potential for burnout? Is this where more women could be a little bit more susceptible to
the need to do everything for
out?
everyone else before they do anything for themselves? I'd say that's fairly common for a lot of, particularly mums anyway. It's very common, and I do see it quite a lot in my audience. Just putting everyone else first. Kids, family, customers, team, everybody else gets a slice of the pie before she does.
Yeah, and that's how I call this the overgiving shit collector.
I'm going to tell my kids that.
So it's just you do everything, you collect a bit of shit, and then you get a bit weighed down. So
I know what they'd say to me. Mum, I did the dishwasher this morning.
I did something. So if we're looking at this from this sort of perspective, and we're looking at that overcooking experience, how do you manage this, like yourself? How do you manage this this balance between being that great entrepreneur, doing the overdo, the self-care? How do you do that well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for starters, I would say I don't always do it well, but several years ago, I came to the realization, or a few things. Number one, that any work that I did in the evening was crap, and that I'd get to my computer the next day and realize it was total rubbish and I'd have to redo it anyway. So I was just like, I just made a blanket decision, no more work in the evening. So once I have put tools down in the late afternoon, I'm done. So it's family time then, and I have my evening routines that just have really helped with things like sleep hygiene and energy levels, and also just reconnecting with the family in the evening. We always eat at the dinner table together and have that time together. So that's one thing that has helped. I also very, very rarely work on weekends. And I say rarely because occasionally it still happens, but it's not a given. And I do see particularly a lot of women do this. They will work nights and weekends to make up for trying to do all of the school runs and all of this, that, and the other during the week. And they just completely overcook themselves. So that's not really good. But yeah, then in the mornings I have my morning routines. I as you know, I have to get up super early, take my boys to their swimming training. Most other swimming parents that I know, they go home to bed then. So, you're up before 5, you go take your kids, and then they'll go home and go to bed, back to bed. And I try very hard to not do that, but to go home, meditate. And I usually do half an hour in the mornings, and then exercise and eat and then get on with the rest of the morning stuff that I have to do for, kids, etc. And then work day is, I have a start and end time that I'm pretty strict about. So there was all of that. But then the other thing that I've just had to accept, and it's really been a bit of a, it's taken a long time to reach this point of acceptance, but just accept that, well, actually, I'm never going to be able to grow my business as fast as, say, another business. So I've got a competitor, and they're really nice guys, actually, but they're also here in Adelaide, where I live. And it's a business owned by 3 guys, and they're young guys. They don't have a family yet. There's 3 of them who are partners in the business. Of course, they're going to be able to do more and grow faster than I can. And, I used to get caught up in that whole kind of comparisonitis, like, why am I not kicking big goals like that? Am I a loser who's not very good at what I do? And then it was just like, oh, really? Clearly I can't. I just don't have the time or the bandwidth that, to compare with that. So
I love this, because look, this is one of the most debilitating things that I hear, and I go through this sometimes too, that maybe I'm not moving my business fast enough, maybe things aren't growing fast enough, and we look at our neighbor, and we go, oh gee. And sometimes you can really, really punish yourself mentally and emotionally through comparison. And look, listeners, I think this is really important. What Catherine is bringing to the table here is that she's in her own lane. She's in her own swimming lane, even though she's getting kicked a little bit by the kids, swimming feet. But, she's in her own lane, and knowing that the capacity is built on your own human capacity. And you just got to be mindful around your energy levels. I've got a really high level of energy, and I don't burn out. I work late at nights, and it's not sustainable to continue to do that all the time. And listeners, it's so important to make sure that whenever you're doing what you're doing in business, that you actually run your own race, because we only have one body. And mental comparison actually creates emotional dysfunction, which eventually creates burnout and problems.
Yeah.
And so I think this is so important, listeners, that you take note of this, is that everyone wants our business. We all want our businesses to work faster than they are going, don't we?
100% of us, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there's not one business that's not saying that. Okay, yeah. We're all wanting it to be better than what we're like, high expectations. And you spoke about a recovering A-type perfectionist. So that's challenging, isn't it? Because we're talking about recovering, which means you always have to be prepared to see it, because it might come over your shoulder at some point and meet you again. And perfectionism is a disaster when we're comparing. Because we can look and say, oh, we're not as good as that person. What are we doing wrong?
I just don't look anymore.
I think that's a smart thing to do. Like, Catherine, I'd love to ask you about this. So I had one of our mentors ask me about this. He said, who are your competitors? And I looked at him and I said, I don't really have any. I don't sort of look at things that way.
Yeah.
Let's have a talk about what that looks like for you when we're looking at competition or competitors. What does that look like for you, Catherine,
Yeah.
in the marketing space?
I mean, I think as business owners, we it's better that there are competitors, in that it means that there's a market for what we do.
Yeah.
So, logically, I'm okay with that. I also don't just look at, businesses that might appear to be very directly similar to mine. More so, I'm looking at, and because obviously we have to do this for our clients as well. So this is, something that and I've had people say to me, oh, I don't think that there is, this is so innovative. There's never been anything like this on the market before. And I'm like, yeah, but what would customers buy to solve that problem if it wasn't yours? Because that's the competitor. And I guess it's just trying to work out in the customer's mind, where else are they going to try and solve this problem, and really try and understand from the customer's perspective what that decision-making process looks like. What is it that's actually really important to them? Because we need to understand that in order to be effective marketers. If we have no idea what's important to our customers, then we're really going to struggle to engage them or convert them into buyers.
Yeah, so it is important to know that there's someone down the street and what they do.
Doesn't mean they're good. They might be a really bad solution to what the problem is, right? But if people are seeking out a solution to something, then it's a good thing, because it means that they're willing to spend money to get that outcome.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when we're looking at what's been happening lately, we're just out of COVID times. How's it been for you? Like, have you found it like there's a bit of a blah, or is there lots of people wanting to jump out and they're excited at the moment? What's it look like in the marketplace as far as timing is concerned right now?
Yeah, it's in the height of COVID and with all the lockdowns and all of that sort of stuff, it was excellent for e-commerce. So that in our market and all of our clients and our audience, it just was going completely nuts. Like, the growth rates just went exponentially up. But then what started to happen, and I'm sure anyone who sort of sees stuff in the media, it would be familiar. It's been really hard to get stuff out of international manufacturers, because finding freight boats that have space has been almost impossible. So costs have gone up. The ability to actually source product and get stuff made and into the country has been excruciatingly difficult. And even just here in Australia, trying to ship orders around, it's not so bad now, but last year, massive crunch with Australia Post. They even stopped delivering for a while, or stopped taking orders for a while, because they just, I guess people were sick with COVID. They weren't allowed to work for 2 weeks or whatever it was. And it was just a bit of a nightmare. So that kind of came to a bit of a supply chain crunch and an operational crunch earlier this year. And it's been a tough year for a lot of people in the e-commerce space. But that being said, it's still a growing industry. So when you look at e-commerce as a business model, e-commerce retail sales are still growing faster than any other type of retail. So, so long as you pick a product that people actually want to buy and you learn how to market and sell online, you'll be okay.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, to know, I remember had someone on my Facebook saying, get into this this product selling, and I'm constantly getting Facebook ads around it. And I was just like, wow, I think it was an Amazon thing. Get onto Amazon and sell some stuff. And what do you think of these things where they're trying to promote
shipping or Amazon sellers? Somebody said something in conversation with me back when COVID was first hitting, and I won't be able to remember it exactly, but it was because a lot of people were turning to buy from Amazon, particularly. They make it super easy to sign up with them. They give you very good incentives and financial deals, etc. But Amazon, they have their fingers in the pie with a lot of businesses, and people, I think, especially here in Australia, don't realize how enormous that business is. And, I sort of look around at my audience of, these beautiful artisan products and, really, they put their heart and soul into making something, and then it just gets ripped off by somebody who wants to stick it on Amazon and make $1 million overnight. Not that happens to everyone, but yeah, it's like you got to choose who you buy from and who you support, because if everybody buys from Amazon, then that's the only seller that's going to exist in our future. Been an absolute monopoly. So that's not really the world that I want to live in personally.
I love that. So how do we compete against a big conglomerate like that when we're a little human? Like, what do we do there to be able to be seen and shown? Like, obviously, we reach out to someone like you, Catherine, who has that experience. And listeners, this is what I suggest you do if you have a product. Here's a person right here who can help you with this sort of thing. What do we do to stand out in a crowd that has everyone goes, we think about Nike, we think about Amazon, we think about shoes. Guns. Everyone says Nike, even though there's Adidas, there's Asics, there's all sorts of different shoes. But what do we do? How do we?
How do you get past? Yeah, I mean, the number one thing is you have to really work out what you do stand for as a brand, and what is the what do you exist for? Is there a purpose? Is there some values? Is there a personality to the brand? I'll give you a fantastic example that I think is a brand most Australians would know, and that is Who Gives a Crap, which obviously grew a lot during COVID. But, they started at the starting line just like anybody else, and they are super clear about the reason for their existence. It's not just to make money, it's more than that. They have a fantastic personality to that brand. It's hilarious, but not that everybody needs to have a hilarious brand personality, but just really make it super clear, and then work hard at your storytelling, because the storytelling is what is going to really engage with your audience emotionally, and it's what they're going to remember. And when people remember, they're more likely to take action. Yeah,
I love that. So we're looking at a storytelling approach, and your big niche is actually people who really want to make an impact on the planet and make a big difference. And that's what makes you happy, yeah?
It does. But actually, statistically speaking, those are the brands that are growing bigger and faster as well.
Really?
So financially, it makes a difference as well. Yeah.
So does that mean, Catherine, that as a planet, we're giving a shit more?
Seems to be, yeah. I think it's the younger generations too, though, because I mean, I have teenagers, children, and they talk about this stuff a lot more. I was so oblivious to any of this stuff when I was a kid. We didn't talk about it at school. There was no education about, global warming or anything like that, but they talk about it now. So I do think it is changing.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening to someone the other day talk about this, that the younger generation are more focused on, they will buy from someone that they know, that's someone that's doing something that is important to them.
Yeah.
I think this is where marketing started to change. This is like something that holds value and dearness, a deep sort of feeling in the heart. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, people actually do buy based on emotion as well. So if you can find that, the ways of connecting with your audience through their storytelling and sharing what you're all about, then you'll shift the needle in your business for sure.
So tell me, Catherine, which emotion is the one that creates the greatest hook? Is it different for everyone? Is it love?
It is different.
Is it sadness? No. What is it that makes people?
Desire, probably, and fear of missing out would be the two most influential.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The standard ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so for you, you're here to help people create that emotional hook. Do you help them with the storytelling? Is that what you do?
Yeah. So we have some skilled team members here who that's what they do. They're visual storytellers or wordsmiths. And so we build that into the way that we work. I wish that I had a videographer on staff. I don't have that yet, but
next.
Maybe next. Yeah.
Don't pick me. I don't know how to do that.
No, I don't know how to do it either. By my son, he's probably.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got something really interesting to ask you. For women who are successful in entrepreneurship, what have you noticed around this as far as success is concerned?
Yeah, it's a minority. And a recent statistic that I came across basically confirms, because only 2% of 7-figure or above businesses are owned and run by women.
That is just not right.
Really, really poor.
Yeah, so that's just not right and not fair. I think this is something that needs to change, in my opinion, is that women, if you're listening to this right now, I want you to get your stats up. I want you to get this right, because you need to start looking at money. And we were talking about this offline, Catherine and I, about not really caring about the money so much in the financial, because we care so much. And we've got to blend that care with the finances. Would you agree?
Yep, we need to really tie it together with, a bigger business means more impact out the other end. It's not about the money for us. It's about the impact that we can create positively, hopefully, in, with our customers, in their lives, maybe for the environment, or some way, shape or form. Yeah, and connect
100%.
it that way.
Yeah, so we just got to lift that value up. Nice people coming first.
Exactly.
And with those values, lifting the monetary value, putting that frame in front, and as you said, making sure that impact is really, really high.
Yep.
Is there anything that you would suggest or recommend for someone starting out? Like, what's one suggestion that you could sort of recommend to someone who's starting out, wanting to build a product, wanting to share it, wanting to build their brand out? What's one thing that you could suggest to them to help them start out?
Yeah, well, aside from obviously checking out my podcast and getting some information that way, but honestly, I'm going to give a shout out to someone else. And this is a book that changes it's just so simple and easy to grasp, and it works for any business, actually, so not just product businesses. And it's called How to Build a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It's been around for a few years. It's a fantastic introduction and a real kind of step-by-step process for anyone who really wants to understand how to translate that story that you want to tell into effective marketing.
I love that. And you also have an amazing podcast that
I have a podcast. You can find it at my name, catherinelangman.com. And yeah, so we put out an episode every week, and there's heaps of, resources, and as well as inspiring interview content as well. So
yeah, I love that. So listeners, I really implore you to jump onto Catherine's details and her website and all the stuff that she does, because one of the things that's really important to me is I like finding people who are really, really good people, who are also really good at what they do. Good people are sometimes hard to find in this day and age, where there's a lot of sharks out there. There's not a lot of dolphins and whales who are really deeply, deeply caring about the product that they provide and what they do in this world. And I know, Catherine, from getting to know you, you actually are one of those people that that I feel lucky that I've met, because I know that I can look to you if anyone needs your service. I know that they're going to get a really good deal, because people are what makes a business work, and the good people, sometimes they're hard to find. So it's
certainly
nice.
In digital marketing, I will say there's a lot of sharks, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's really challenging, because we
Yeah.
don't know what to pick, and I've experienced things that have not been great for me. So it's nice to have someone who is amazing and really, really deeply cares around her service. So, Catherine, I really want to thank you for jumping on Uncovered. So we're going to, if listeners, I'd love it if you could like or share Catherine's podcast, our podcast here, to get some of this information out there around marketing and product marketing. So like and share this podcast, and I'm going to put all of Catherine's details in the show notes so you can find her nice and easily. How do we find you, Catherine? Just all on your details. What's the easiest?
Yeah, at Kath Langman on Instagram or Facebook, or catherinelangman.com. So it's super easy.
Awesome. Thanks so much for jumping on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great fun.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.